Sadly, by the end of last night, officers had to face some of the most significant violence that they will have ever encountered in their career, uh, by a group of, what I can only describe as being mindless thugs. Uh, Horrendous injuries. I have a list of over 50 officers, many of whom have spent the night in A&E.
The mother of one of the girls killed in the Southport knife attack has pleaded to stop the violence after that riot which broke out last night outside a local mosque. This morning, Patrick Hurley, who's the MP for Southport, told Times Radio that misinformation on social media led to the protest. Let's have a listen.
This misinformation doesn't just exist on people's internet browsers and on people's phones. It has real world impact. And what happened is that the real world impact of that was that we then had hundreds of people descending on the town, descending on Southport from outside of the area, intent on causing trouble.
Now, there's all these fake news stories claiming that the suspect was a Muslim asylum seeker called Ali al-Shakati. Well, let's now speak with Chris McGlade. Chris is chair of the Merseyside Police Federation. Chris, thanks very much for joining us this morning, this lunchtime rather.
Yeah, thank you, Aisha.
Tell us what it was like for your colleagues last night. What did they face?
Well, yeah, if I can just first and foremost, just, on behalf of myself and our colleagues, the start of yesterday, we were our thoughts and prayers were with the families of these three young girls, and that's where it should be today. Sadly, by the end of last night, officers had to face some of the most significant violence that they will have ever encountered in their career, by a group of, what I can only describe as being mindless thugs. Horrendous injuries. I have a list of over 50 officers, many of whom have spent the night in A&E, with injuries ranging from broken bones, fractures, concussion. People are having to undergo CT scans, which brings us on to a second point, which is the impact that last night's actions have had on the local NHS, who've also managed this horrific incident. And now last night had to deal with 50 more patients that they otherwise shouldn't have been having to deal with. Honestly lost for words, the images I've seen.
Gosh, Chris, and look, and I'm sure all my listeners pay tribute to the work that you and all the very brave police officers do. It's all very well for people to sit back and do their armchair commentary, but, your men and women have to run towards these kind of incidents when they happen. And that's such a good point you've just made about the local NHS, because as you say, not only would they have been reeling from what happened yesterday on top of this, this violence from last night. And look, Chris, from what you've heard, what happened last night? Who were these people in the area? What were they doing there? Were they local? Had they come from outside the area? What did you sort of see? What did you and your colleagues see?
I mean, there's obviously an ongoing investigation, so I don't want to speculate too much, but certainly our position at the moment is these certainly weren't people from within the local community. They've clearly travelled to that area intent on violence. Officers were deployed in Southport yesterday as part of a reassurance operation, as you would expect. They were engaging with the community. We had people offering them food, drink, and then unfortunately towards the evening, as I say, this group have arrived, and Merseyside police are currently investigating that matter, and no doubt we will establish where these people have come from and who they are. Certainly all the appropriate resources are being put into that as we speak. But it was quite clear to me, and from the images I've seen and the people I've spoken to, that they've come from outside that area, a grieving community, and inflicted damage, on police vehicles, premises, places of worship, just mindless thuggery, people who are intent on violence. And, as I say, there's no words.
And Chris, the Prime Minister has warned that those behind the unrest will feel the full force of the law. Are you certain that will happen? Will you be going after these people?
Absolutely. I've been on duty since very early this morning. I've attended many meetings. That work is ongoing as we speak. And Merseyside police have been clear today, as you would expect. They'll be relentless in identifying these individuals and bringing them to justice, and rightly so, because, as I say, not only on behalf of the officers who were victim to it, but also the people who lived in that area. You know, young children off on school holidays who should be enjoying time with their family, and instead are having to stay inside and avoid slabs being thrown, vehicles being set on fire, fireworks.
Yeah.
Just appalling behaviour.
It is. Well, look, Chris, we'll let you get back to work. And thanks very much for all the work that you and your colleagues do. That's Chris McGlade, who's chair of the Merseyside Police Federation. Well, let's now speak with Mark Owen Jones, who's the author of Digital Authoritarianism and also Associate Professor of Media Analytics at Northwestern University in Qatar. And it's worth looking at a really interesting thread that Mark has done on social media, looking at how misinformation kind of contributed to what happened last night. And I'm delighted that Mark joins us now. Mark, thanks very much for joining us.
Great to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Just to kind of explain to my listeners what your kind of analysis is of what role misinformation, particularly on social media, is playing in these sort of situations.
Yeah, I think what happened in Southport is what happens every time we see a sort of stabbing or an attack. We saw the same in Sydney in April, is that immediately there is a reflexive action where some people, bad actors, bad faith actors, people engaging in this kind of behavior for political or financial ends, spread misinformation. They spread false news, they spread false rumors. And oftentimes they create and fabricate the identity of the attacker. And oftentimes this is to try and target a minority. In this particular case, immediately after the news was reported, and I say immediately, minutes after it was reported, people were speculating and spreading false information that the attacker was either an immigrant, a Muslim, an Arab, or a foreigner. And this happens every time there's an attack. It has been happening for so long. It's natural that given the tragedy of the circumstances, people are going to be upset and wanting for revenge. The sad reality is that if you spread false news about who the perpetrator is, you are running the risk of creating a violent scene. And that's exactly what we saw last night in Southport.
And let's be honest, Mark, some of the people spreading this misinformation want that. That's what their aim is. They want, chaos. They want a sort of helter-skelter, like kind of race wars on the streets. So there's a lot of bad actors. Where is this coming from? I've seen reports saying, is this like are these bad actors, are they from Russia? Are they from the far right? Where are these bad actors and this misinformation? Who's behind it, do you think?
Well, it's a good question. I mean, if we deal with the sort of people we know who are doing this, it's the people like Tommy Robinson. We see influencers like Andrew Tate, even people sort of on the political spectrum like Darren Grimes, who are putting out these false narratives, right? The questions we don't know is, how are they receiving this information in the first place? Why is Andrew Tate, for example, commenting on what's going on Southport? Is someone telling him to do that? And I don't mean in a conspiratorial way, but is someone just sending a message on Twitter saying, hey, Andrew, can you share this information about this attacker in Southport? So we have those people who work at that level who are trying to stir up race relations and create bigotry and tensions within society. Whether or not there is another level above that where there is state actors potentially involved is something we don't know yet. We know this happens. We certainly know this happens. In the case of Southport, it's not clear if that's happening at this time. But what I can say is there are people who are obviously trying to create fake accounts. They are creating fake accounts, fake news sites, using these fake news sites to try and give like an illusion of credibility to these
narratives. One called Channel 13.
Channel 3 Now News, right?
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's a generic name. It might as well be Channel 13. It could be Channel 107 for all we know. But it looks like it's a news site. It's got Facebook pages. It's got a website. It publishes news articles. And the way these work is they will publish like a bunch of content that's real or credible or just taken from somewhere else, but it's true. And then every now they'll put in this bit of disinformation that gets circulated.
Right.
And some people will see Channel 3 Now News and they'll say, oh, that's credible. The news reported it. And then they share it.
And of course, because it looked, and very briefly, just short on time, Mark.
Yeah.
Do social media companies need to take more responsibility, whether it's Twitter, X, whether it's Facebook, Meta?
100%. They need to do more to tackle fake news and hate speech, especially when it leads to violence. They need to give consumers the tools to know what is real and what is not. And they should not be making money of people who can set up fake accounts and spread disinformation and hate speech.
Well, look, Mark, really good to talk to you and get your analysis. Thanks for your time. That's Mark Owen Jones, who's the author of Digital Authoritarianism. He's also the Associate Professor at Media Analytics at Northwestern University in Qatar. And it's well worth reading his Twitter chain. Obviously, ironically, talking about social media there, but it's a very interesting piece of analysis.